American public understands the magnitude of what our soldiers have been through. The trauma that has been experienced by our soldiers, it just makes perfect sense that there would be post-traumatic stress disorder that follows with that. This is an opportunity for all of us to give back in some small measure the effort that's been given on our behalf by these soldiers by simply being aware, taking the time to understand what might be going on.
Like previous wars, some returning veterans will have problems readjusting from the trauma of combat. Many will not seek immediate help. Others may experience delayed symptoms. These veterans will come back to their communities to be reunited with their families. This presentation was made to increase the awareness of the readjustment challenges for returning combat veterans, so that family members and community leaders, particularly public safety officials, can provide proper assistance. According to a recent military study, an estimated 1 in 3 of our returning combat soldiers will suffer from symptoms associated with post-traumatic stress disorder.
60% of those people reported that they would not share that with anyone, would not come forward. And that's one of the more difficult parts to deal with. Other people have to come forth and recognize those signals within the people themselves to help them.
When he came back after his first tour in Iraq, I flew out to the base to meet him, and we hadn't seen him for 7 months. And the first thing I noticed, and every time I think of this, was the shell shock in his eyes and the light. That light and upbeat part of his personality was clearly gone. I think it was within 3 days of his stay in the hospital when they diagnosed him with severe post-traumatic stress disorder.
PTSD happens when someone is exposed to a traumatic event in which they feel helplessness, fear, or horror. This triggers a part of the brain called the limbic system to start a cascade of responses that will prepare the person either to run away in fear or to fight with anger.
During my experience in Iraq during a recent deployment, part of my duties was to investigate and do risk assessments. I think in a common understanding about post-traumatic stress disorder is that people have normal reactions in abnormal environments, and when they return to a stabilized environment, they may continue to have some of that, what would have been a normal reaction, but now they're in a stabilized environment. And they need to look at ways for coping skills and how to adjust, and they can get help, and there is help available.
People who've been exposed to trauma, they haven't had a chance to get treatment for it, they will find themselves constantly being triggered by events in the environment, such as might be certain smells that might remind them of their experience in the traumatic event. It could be certain sounds, it could be certain situations, certain people. Many people find it very difficult to go into places that they're not familiar with, in which there are many different types of stimuli.
And I ended up in Fallujah for 5 months. Nice place.
Right.
You know, the first time I came back, I hardly even remember it.
Spot. All we have is 10 between. Oh my God, it's 10 in between.
When I first came out, I couldn't at all go to places where I didn't know people, and there was large crowds or anything. Even the mall would bother me to a point.
But they come back and they're detached, and we're hearing stories from these kids that we've heard 15 years ago from 40-year-olds about this retching isolation and just maybe drinking too much, going out, finding the biggest, baddest looking dude in the bar and somehow managing to pick a fight.
Many veterans have a hard time driving in traffic because this is, to them, a situation where they may be unsafe or could be dangerous. So if someone's driving too close behind them or driving erratically, they feel very threatened and they get angry.
The next day, the van came up, and instead of waving, two guys with AK-47s jumped out.
Other symptoms would be the sleep disturbances, problems in concentrations.
I sleep on the couch. That's it. When I'm here, anyway. I'm getting better with sleep, you know, but I have my days.
It was terrible. He would wake us out of a sleep and just scream.
The stigma of mental illness has been around for as long as we can remember. Some people have the impression this means that I'm, quote, crazy.
A lot of people are afraid of that stigma you're talking about. You know, how will I ever advance in life if people think I'm a psycho, you know?
In addition, people are worried about what others would think about them. So, if someone's just wanting to have aspirations to join the fire department or the police department, they may be concerned that their symptoms might be considered something that will keep them from reaching these career goals. The funny thing is that the symptoms themselves will keep you from reaching career goals, but treatment helps people to do very well.
What we learned from the Vietnam War is that, and the veterans, that the veterans were reluctant to go to the VA, the Veterans Administration. Looked at them sometimes as the enemy, or somebody was going to do just a bunch of red tape and a hassle. And because of that, there were people who recognized that we needed the assistance of the VA. And they come up with these vet centers, which was and outreach programs, which was the benefits of the VA without the hassle.
Trying to get him involved into the VA system at first was difficult. They have to do a lot of paperwork, and I see my son that was getting all this counseling on base and is back home and spiraling downward very quickly. So I took him in my car and went to the nearest vet center, is what I did.
When they come in here, they go direct to the treatment source. We need to help these folks reconnect.
You know, I found Dr. Mitchell works right off the bat. He's just unbelievable at his job, you know, and what he does is he just educates you on what's going on in your brains.
There was a huge difference in him. He was, he seemed much more relaxed. That light that I talk about that was gone, that shell shock look in his eyes was clearly diminished quite a bit.
And now I can see it, you know, I can actually feel and tell, like, maybe I'll have a bad day, or, you know, just something doesn't feel right. And at least I know what it is, and that helps me. I'm like, oh, you know, it's just, we can fight through it or whatever.
Well, most officers understand that when you're responding to any call, you need to establish your officer safety requirements and stabilize the situation as best you can. But sometimes in unique circumstances, we need to take a few extra minutes and recognize the fact that there's some unique challenges going on, and maybe offer an opportunity for assistance and redirect and probably prevent a future more serious event when possible.
Regardless of how many parades, celebrations, yellow ribbons, there is a readjustment. It's something that deep inside you was planted in, you know, during the war, in Iraq, in Vietnam, in World War I, World War II. It's just the nature of the beast.
So here we are. Even though there have been other conflicts and other wars and other casualties and other people affected, the numbers will be very large coming back, and the soldiers are going to be in great need. Are we going to wait again another several years, find out that we're not doing enough, and then react after several more years pass? I hope not.
To find a vet center nearest you, visit www.va.gov.